Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last little while, and I would say this brewery are best known for their hazy New England IPAs and also the big fruity juicy sours, the Berliner Weisses, the Goses and things like this. They're a brewery that I think you should be keeping an eye on over the next little while if you're interested in Swedish beer, and I certainly always keep an eye on the new beers that they're releasing. So this one comes highly recommended from me. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a little bit north once again. We're going to go to a very beautiful little town called Strömstad, which is to the north of Gothenburg, Göteborg, on the Swedish west coast and quite close to the Norwegian border, in fact. And we're going to return to Fermenterarna, or the fermenters, as you might call them in English. But this particular beer is called Dressed for Tropical Summer. It comes in at 6% ABV. This one is a Gose, and it's got a little bit of guava, pineapple, passion fruit, lemon and lime added into it apparently. So yeah, this one is supposed to be very nice. This beer was released here in Sweden as part of the local småskalig assortment through Systembolaget on the 1st of May 2021. So yeah, I'm drinking this one a little bit later, but certainly looking forward to it. I got this one because the name kind of reminded me of the Dressed for Swedish Summer that I had a few months back, and that was a very, very nice sour beer. But yeah, fingers crossed this is another good one. We've had some good Goses and Berliner Weisses from Fermenterarna over the last little while, so I do have high hopes for this one. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. A 6% Gose with guava, pineapple, passion fruit, lemon and lime added into it. That's quite a selection, if you like. But yeah, let's crack on with this review then. Looking forward to this one. Hopefully it's another good beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fermenterarna before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Fermenterarna then, on to my brewery notes. So, Fermenterarna, as I've told you before, was founded by Niklas Aronsson and Anna Claesson, and they founded the company together back in 2018. So these guys are still relatively new on the Swedish beer scene. But the brewery can be found in Strömstad in Västergötland, very close to the Norwegian border as I mentioned earlier, and a good little bit to the north of Gothenburg. But apparently Niklas ordered a beer one day in a bar. His whole journey with beer began when he ordered a beer in a bar one day without knowing what it was, and it turned out that this was the Tropic Thunder from Brewery. And as some of you might know, that is kind of one of the cult classic sour beers here in Sweden, so try that if you haven't already. It's a collaboration with Stillwater Artisanal from over in the States. But on the other hand, Anna, she had a long interest in things that had fermented, and she also runs the restaurant Kostas Trädgårdar, and she's fermented things like sauerkraut. I think she's made her own like sourdough breads and things like this in the past. She's done a lot of work with fermentation, so two quite different journeys towards brewing beer, we have to say. But the brewery started out with a small 200-litre brew kit and tanks in late 2018. And they took a break actually to expand the company after their beers were received very well at different festivals. So these days they boast a new facility with two 500-litre brew kits and a total tank capacity of around 17,000 litres. And they've been aiming to brew, or they were aiming to brew, at 50,000 litres over the course of 2019. And I believe they did meet that target, but they do have the equipment apparently to brew around 250,000 litres of beer per year. And I think they're just gradually working to scale that up actually. I'm not sure how much they managed to brew over the course of 2020, and I guess they'll have another target for 2021 of course. But according to Untappd, these guys have produced around 115 different types of beer as of June 2021 when I'm filming this review for you. And as I said, this brewery are known mainly for their kind of New England hazy IPAs and they're big kind of fruity, juicy Berliner Weisses and Goses and stuff like that. So if those are the kind of beers you're into, this is a brewery that I would highly recommend you check out for those. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Fermenterarna for the moment. As I said, these guys are one of the Swedish breweries that I keep an eye out for because they're doing some very, very nice beers in my opinion. But yeah, that is it for your history section in this video. So yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and get this guy open. So as you can see, this is your standard kind of style of artwork that you'll get from Fermenterarna. I really do like the sort of almost, I don't know if it's right to call it minimalist, but I do like the style of artwork that you get from Fermenterarna. So as you can see, the can is sweating a little bit because it's quite warm today. But there you can see the Fermenterarna symbol, and then you can see the data side of this beer. Oddly enough, this one, for some reason, it doesn't say what fruits are in this one. I had to look at glass banking to get the fruits out of this, to get what fruits were in this beer. So maybe this is something they need to fix, is make sure they put what fruits, because I actually wondered about that when it says innehåller, ingredients. I would have thought they would have to say what fruits are in that for allergy purposes, but I don't know. But yeah, 440ml can, this one. As you can see, gold top on the can. I think I paid probably about 50 Swedish kroners for this. The sour beers, usually the regular IPAs tend to be about 45, but I think the sour beers like this tend to be a wee bit more. So I think I would have paid about 50 Swedish kronor for this. So that's about €5, about £4.50 sterling, and I guess maybe, you know, $5.75 American, something like that. I'm not sure if the dollar rate's picked up a little bit, but that's a rough price reference for those of you watching in different parts of the world. But yeah, 6% Gose, this one. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So yeah, pineapples, guava, passionfruit, lemon and lime in this one. So I think this should be very, very interesting. So for those of you that don't know, the Gose is a style of beer that originated in Germany. It used to be, what they did, they basically used to put these beers in bottles and let them ferment. So you would basically go down into the cellars in the places that used to make these beer, and you'd see basically a whole cover of just foam. And they used to put salt in the beers as well. So the Gose is defined kind of by its slight saltiness, if you like. But yeah, these beers, they used to put them in bottles, put them in the cellar, and then used to just let the wild yeast go into them. And you always used to get, you know, bubbles, just basically a layer of bubbles sitting on top of it. I was reading that when I researched one of the original Goses that I reviewed from Germany a wee while back. But these days, of course, you're getting the modern sours, the Berliner Weisses, the Goses and things like this that are, you know, big and creamy and oaty and things like that. So these modern takes on the styles are quite different from the originals, of course. But yeah, you know, I think when it comes to these more modern Goses and Berliner Weisses, I think they're very straight shooting in terms of their flavour profile, but if they're done correctly, they're very, very nice actually. And Fermenterarna are one of the breweries in Sweden, along with the likes of, you know, Mariendagens, Wizard, I'm trying to think who else I've had these kind of sours from. I think Brewski have done quite a few nice interesting ones. There's some very good Nordic sour breweries, I think they're calling them Nordic sours, going about just now. So definitely a style worth checking out if you get the chance. Omnipollo, of course, have done quite a few of these too. But yeah, I always find these beers very straight shooting, but I really like how they go about their business. But yeah, as you can see, when we poured this beer, it poured with about a quarter finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That's faded away to just be a nice kind of thin foamy layer, but round the edge of the glass you can see there is a bit of a nice kind of thick ring to it, but I think that might well fade away as well. But it looks like a lovely lovely beer, this one, in terms of its colour. I was trying to wonder what colour this is. I thought it might have been a little bit more orange, but it's a lovely kind of bright yellow. So remember, when it comes to determining the colour of your beers, it's one, the type of malts that you use. Usually that determines the magnitude of the colour. Two, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Two, any adjuncts that you put in. And then, three, any adjuncts that you put in, and then four, any barrel aging that you do. And when it comes to a beer like this, you know, the adjuncts, I think they will be playing a bit of a role in this one. to be honest with you. Yeah, the yellow in this one is quite similar to what you get from a kind of straight up New England IPA or whatever, so it's a bit more noticeable when adjuncts come into play. It's a bit more noticeable with like berry sours and things like this, but this one certainly looks the part when you consider what fruits are in it. I thought the guava might have given it a slightly different colour actually, but no. But in terms of the colour itself, I would say that this one's a lovely kind of bright mango juice colour. I always like comparing these sort of hazy beers to the different fruit juices because that's just what they remind me of. But this one contains wheat actually. It doesn't contain any oats, which I'm surprised at. So this one, maybe they've brewed this to be a little bit crisp, because I think usually the sour beers that these guys do tend to be a little bit more kind of thick and creamy, if you like. So yeah, this one could be quite interesting. But in terms of appearance, nothing overly surprising about this one. It does look a little bit like a New England IPA, right enough, but when you consider what fruits are in it and what kind of style of beer it is, you know, having a bright yellow mango juice colour like this is not unheard of. But as I say, I thought guava might have given it a wee bit more colour. But yeah, let's have a little look at this one then and see how we get on with the aroma. Oh, that smells very nice. It does smell very nice. So, as I've said to you already, I find these beers, usually the backbone of these beers is very, very straight shooting. And again, this one kind of follows on with that as well. One other thing you should note about these beers is that they don't, the Swedish breweries at least, and I think the other Nordic breweries to a degree, or the other Scandinavian breweries I should say, they don't tend to add hops into these. Back home in Scotland, Vault City and Holy Goat, they put hops in their sour beers, but then I think over in Finland as well, the likes of Coolhead and Salama, I think they put hops in their sour beers for sure as well. So yeah, it seems to be a Scandinavian trend that to put how do you say, to put not to put hops in these beers. But yeah, with this one, you get that lovely big citrusy zest out of it straight away, but you can smell some of the juicier tropical fruit kind of sitting in behind it. The base of the beer has a little bit of that kind of bready and yogurty type vibe to it as well, which I really like. But yeah, the overall vibe of this beer, it's kind of interesting because you don't get such a big green component from the hops, but you certainly get the big zestiness from the fruit, and I think that kind of compensates for it, to be honest. I'd be curious to know why they didn't put oats in this one, because usually, as I say, they put a bit of oat in the malt base with these things, but certainly with this one, you can smell that it's not quite as thick as some of the ones that we've had before. But this is what we want. We want them to kind of vary things up a little bit when they're brewing the same styles quite often. But yeah, certainly the backbone of this beer, to break it down rather than just give first impressions, the backbone of the beer, you can smell a soft kind of white bready quality coming out of it. It does have a little bit of an almost kind of dusty, floury quality to it, to be honest. It almost smells like it's fresh out of the bakery, which is quite interesting. There's one or two little elements of bread crust in there for sure. And you know, you can get a wee bit of an almost you do get a little bit of a kind of almost yogurty kind of thing. Like if I was smelling this blind, I don't know if I'd be able to tell that there wasn't oats in this, because it does give you a wee bit of that kind of oaty, kind of yogurty type thing, which is really interesting. So yeah, the aroma of this beer for sure is quite the aroma of this beer for sure on the malty side of things is quite similar to what we've had from them before. You get a little bit of that kind of creamy, yogurty, petit filou type thing coming out of this one. Obviously a bit more citrusy though. You can smell the soft white bread kind of underneath. You get a bit of a kind of floury dustiness and a wee touch of bread crust. There's maybe one or two little elements of kind of biscuity character coming out of this one, which I think is quite interesting as well, like a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business. So yeah, the malty side of things I think works quite well in this one, and it is a wee bit different to what we've had from them before, but it still gives you that kind of typical yogurty sort of thing. But yeah, I certainly like how this one goes about its business on the malty side of things. So a wee bit different, but still kind of the same. Like I said to you earlier, you don't get so much of a green component out of this one. There's maybe a little bit of a placebo with these beers, where you get a bit of a kind of grassiness, which would usually be provided by the hops, of course. But yeah, you don't really notice it so much in this beer because of all the zestiness from the fruit. But I would say there is a wee bit of a kind of grassy floral element just sitting in this one, which is kind of interesting. You will notice with this beer as well, I think there's a little bit of salty character to this one too. And again, that's one of the kind of characteristics of the Gose. There should always be a little bit of salt in these beers. The original Gose was a sort of wheat-based beer with a bit of salt in it, and you can smell just a wee bit of the kind of salty quality with this one as well. I don't know why, as soon as I opened this beer, my nose started to run, which is typical when you want to film a review. But yeah, I find this beer, I think this one does actually smell a little bit more salty than some of the other ones we've had from them before. But on the fruity side of things, it's actually quite interesting how everything goes together in this one. For me, I noticed the guava quite a lot. And I think one of the reasons for that would be that I had a guava beer not that long ago, and I wasn't so used to guava. And I think in this case, it kind of sticks out a little bit more. So for me, guava is kind of like a slightly greener and slightly sharper mango. That's how I've always found that, or I found in recent times when I've got more into guava and properly understood the flavour. It's a little bit more like a slightly greener, a slightly sharper, slightly greener, a slightly sharper kind of mango almost. So I really like how that goes together in this beer. The guava for me sort of forms the sharp and more kind of sour side of the beer, but you can definitely smell the kind of smooth passion fruit in this one. The passion fruit isn't adding too much pungency to this beer, it's giving you a bit more of a smoothness. You can smell that nice light pineapple as well, which is great. So yeah, lovely nice kind of light pineapple-y quality to this one. And I think the lemon and lime, you can smell those definitely on the kind of tip of the nose, which is really interesting, but they're not too pungent. You can smell the lime has a bit of juiciness to it, and the lemon I think just takes a back seat. For me, it's the guava that gives you the sharpness in this beer. You've got the passion fruit and the pineapple sitting in there, and also just a bit of that lemon lime too. So I really like how this beer goes about its I really like how this beer just goes about its business there, but I think it is about time to try this one. There's no real sediment sitting on this one on the bottom, so I think we've got all the goodness out of the can into the glass with this one. So yeah, let's have a taste of it and see how we get on. So this one is Dressed for Tropical Summer, a 6% Gose with guava, pineapples, passion fruit, lemon and lime from Fermenterarna in Strömstad on the Swedish west coast. Make sure you take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma. This one a wee bit different from what we've had from them before, but I have to say I'm certainly looking forward to this one. So let's get stuck in. Sláinte, skål, cheers. That is very nice. I'm not surprised. I mean, I know that this brewery do good sour beers. This one is quite different though to what we've had before, but I certainly like it. It is, I would say that it's definitely lighter and crisper than the other ones we've had before. I think the salt comes out a wee bit more as well, just on first impression, but we'll see how that evolves over time. But yeah, this beer is certainly a good little bit different to what we've had from Fermenterarna in the past, but I would say this is a very, very nice beer actually. So thumbs up to Fermenterarna for this one. I think they've pulled off a solid beer here. But yeah, I think, you know, when it's tropical summer and it's been released in May, I can kind of understand why they would take the mouthfeel of this one, you know, take the thickness of this beer away a little bit and sort of go for something a wee bit more kind of crisp. But yeah, this one's definitely up to the same standard that we've come to expect of Fermenterarna, but flavour profile wise it is quite different from what we've had from them before. So yeah, let's try and break this down a little bit then and just see how we go. So it's kind of similar. This beer actually comes across in the flavour is quite similar to how it does in the aroma, to be honest with you. So the backbone of this beer, you can feel a nice little bit of a kind of crisp, fluffy white bread sitting in there, and you can feel that going right across the middle of your palate. It does become a little bit more sort of fluffy it does become a little bit more sort of fluffy and things the further you go into it. There's a little bit of a, if you go to either end of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there is a wee bit of a bread crusty sort of thing there. And you do get a wee bit of that almost dusty, floury kind of thing from the base of this beer. But it is interesting. Like we said, this beer doesn't have oats in it. But pardon me, what you will notice in the middle of your palate with this beer, it's almost like you've got a little kind of circle sitting in the middle of your palate there. And I think it kind of, as you say, I think it kind of goes, it does develop a little bit of an almost kind of yogurty, petit filou type thing to it. So that's really interesting for sure. Because I always would have thought that it was the oats that gave you that, but maybe not. Maybe the wheat and the yeast are partially responsible as well. Because as I say, it doesn't feel quite as thick, but you do still get a little touch of that yogurty thing, particularly the further you go into the aftertaste. You're also going to notice that in that middle third of your palate, you can feel the sort of saltiness to the beer as well. So I do like that they've kind of gone, it feels like they've maybe gone for a slightly more kind of classic Gose base in this beer. Which I think works very well for the fruity profile that it has. But yeah, like I said, these beers tend to have a very straight shooting malt base, and the fruits that sit on top of that usually add a lot of the flavour. And it is one of these beer styles, as I say, they're quite straight shooting in terms of what they do, but if they're well executed, they can be beautiful, beautiful beers. So yeah, this one, the malt base in this, quite a bit different, quite a bit lighter and slightly more crisp, I think, compared to the other Fermenterarna ones we've had before. But it certainly works. That's the middle third of your palate we've talked about then. Border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there's a wee bit of breadiness kind of builds up there, a wee bit of bread crust as well. And then as you go into the back third of your palate, you can feel there's a bit of, you can feel it's a sort of crisp white, soft white bready kind of thing that goes in there as well. But sitting on top of that, you can feel there's a bit of a yeasty component to this beer. You can feel the yeasty flavours give the flavour a little bit of height almost. So when you start at the back your palate, you can feel it kind of condense, it kind of condenses down a little bit, condenses down a wee bit, and then as you go into the middle third of your palate, you can feel that there's a little bit more of a kind of, you can feel it's a little bit more kind of condensed and squashed together, the flavour, but I think it works really well. This Gose definitely has an element of crispness to it that you want from a kind of summer beer, if you like. I think that's fair to say. But yeah, I think that covers the malty side of things in this beer. On the edge of your palate where you'd normally get the hops, I do think there's a tiny little bit of earthiness in the back corners of your palate. As you move further forward, that smoothens out, of course, and I think there is a wee bit of that kind of placebo floral note on the front corners of your tongue and a bit of the grassiness around the front edge of your palate. But yeah, I think it works very, very nicely. Front third of your tongue, of course, that's where all the juicy fruity quality comes out of the beer. But yeah, again, it's really nice how this goes together. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build-up, a wee bit of a bread crusty sort of thing. Then the base of that front third of your palate, there's a soft sort of white bready character comes out of the beer. So yeah, it has that soft, just kind of fresh white bready kind of thing, which I really like, and that really just gives you a nice layer for everything else. But yeah, the one thing you have to remember about these beers is that when you add fruit into a beer as an adjunct, what I always find it tends to do is that some of the juicy fruitiness comes out off around the edge of the palate. You find this with fruit IPAs, that fruit adjuncts into the beer tend to suppress a little bit of the green component in the beer. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't put the hops in. They maybe find it a little bit kind of pointless, but I would say it adds a little bit more kind of depth and things to the beer even if you just use like a kind of regular Hallertau or Tettnanger or something like this. But the fruitiness out of this beer is probably where the big complexity kind of lies, if you like. So let's break down the fruitiness of the beer a little bit more. But yeah, again, I would say the thing that sticks out to me in this beer, you can feel if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, there's a lovely big kind of sharp guava note out of this one. But the thing that's interesting about the guava, it has, I've always, I say always, I've not got that much experience with guava, so ignore that. Guava for me, as I say, I think it's got quite a sharp flavour, but then it's got a bit of a mango note to it, and you almost get a little bit of the kind of papaya type quality from it as well. So guava's a really interesting fruit. I really need to just go to the supermarket, buy a few guavas and just eat them and see, you know, just kind of properly get used to the flavour. But for me, the guava that you get out of this, it really is quite sharp in a sense, but you can feel the saltiness mixing in with these fruity characters as well, which is really interesting. But yeah, the guava for me sits at the back of that front third of your palate, so yeah. But yeah, nice, as I say, there's a nice little bit of a kind of sharp, as I say, a sharper guava note at the back there. In front of that, as you move further forward, you start to get the passion fruit kind of sitting underneath that, and you can feel the softer pineapple sitting on top of that as well. And as those flavours kind of spread further forward on that middle third of your palate, then just as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you can feel the limey notes underneath. The limey notes are kind of forming the base layer there, and it's a little bit of an oily limey character actually, but then as you go further into the aftertaste, you'll feel the kind of lemony qualities just jumping off the tongue a little bit with this one. So it's really interesting how that side of things goes about its business in this beer. I do like that about this beer for sure. But in terms of the kind of front edges of your palate, I would say it is a sort of lemon, limey, zesty kind of thing that you get going around the sides of your palate. But I would say the guava's maybe contributing there as well. So the green, the fruity part that is coming off around the edge of your palate, definitely some guava in there, a bit of lime from me. I'd say particularly on the front kind of tip of the tongue, it's a little bit more lemony. I think the more kind of tropical fruits, the pineapples and the passion fruits, I think they sit on that back half of the front third of your tongue. So that's definitely interesting to see how it goes together. But yeah, I think it works. It works very, very well. The fruity side of this beer, I think, is very nicely executed. So big thumbs up to Fermenterarna for this. They've done something quite different with this sour compared to the other ones I've had from them, at least, but I think they've done a good job with it, so big thumbs up to these guys. Again, they're a very capable brewery within this style bracket, as I've told you many times, but yeah, this one I think is definitely worth checking out if you haven't already. So yeah, let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, stuttering away. In terms of the mouthfeel, this beer, I would say, it's kind of right in the middle of the spectrum. It's mid-bodied, carbonation is very, very smooth. It does have an element of that kind of creaminess that you'd expect of one of these kind of modern Scandinavian style sour beers, I guess we could call them. So it does have a wee bit of that. It's definitely not the thickest and creamiest one we've had from this particular brewery, right enough, but it works nicely. In terms of the IBUs, I think technically speaking this beer will have 0 IBUs, but I think in reality it's going to have like 5 or something like this, 5 to 10 IBUs. The malty base of this one, it's nice and crisp and sort of bready in a sense. Like I say, there's a wee bit of sweetness to it, a little bit of graininess, and then you've got those big, you get a wee tiny touch of a sweetness out of this one, but not overly much. But then a big juicy fruity character. You get a bit of saltiness out of the beer as well, and a good blend in the fruitiness of soft tropical fruits and a little bit more of a kind of sharper kind of citrusy element. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes about its business from that perspective. It's a lovely, lovely Gose, this one, so I would highly recommend that you check out this beer if you get the chance. Big thumbs up to Fermenterarna once again. I need to see what their next sours are going to be actually. But yeah, I think we can round off the review there then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fermenterarna. This one was the Dressed for Tropical Summer, a 6% Gose with guava, pineapple, passion fruit, lemon and lime from Fermenterarna in Strömstad, close to the Norwegian border on the northern part of the Swedish west coast. Definitely check out those guys if you like your New England hazies and your big juicy fruity sours. Until the next time, slàinte, skål, cheers, and we'll see you in the next review.